Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at epicenters in the business model canvas. These are great ways of trying to come up with new ideas for business models and understanding the business models of competitors, where they get a certain amount of their strength from. I'm going to do this in this view rather than full presenter view today, because I'm going to draw a lot on the slides to try and make it a little bit more interesting and interactive. So let's jump in and let's ask ourselves, okay, what are the epicenters in the business model canvas? So basically, in a business model, you've got three basic epicenters. Yeah, you've got the resource side of the business model canvas, which is really very much about what you've got, how you use it to make the business model canvas, to make the value proposition. Sorry, bit of a slip there. Then you've got the offer side, the customer side of the business model canvas. Who are the customers? What are you creating for them? What do they want? What do they need? You've got the offer component, which is very much focused on the value proposition, creating a really standout offer. And then you've got the finance component of the canvas. Where does the money come from? Where does it go to? And so these are three different epicenters, if you like, to start thinking about the business model canvas. So a lot of the time, somebody comes up with a business model canvas and they'll say, well, we've got customer this, we've got to do value proposition, we've got key resource, so therefore we're not going to do key activity, that's going to work into the value proposition, the channels are going to go like that, and that's going to lead to lots of nice money. That's how it's going to work, and that is one way of doing it. It's one way of bringing together ideas from the business model canvas and getting them to work. However, there are different ways of looking at this, and one of these is the epicenters. And so basically, what this says is, okay, do we think that we want to come up with something finance driven? Yeah, a finance driven in innovation. And what we do in the finance area is then going to be driving everything else. So if you think back 50 or 60 years, Xerox was a very clever company, and they were known for making hugely expensive copiers, a couple of $100,000 a piece, and offices couldn't afford them, so they had to pay in cash, and that's meant to be a dollar sign, but it didn't really get there, paying cash for the machine. However, Xerox said, okay, what happens if you pay month by month by month, and have it on a rental basis, which hardly surprising to us now, because that's how all photocopiers are rented or leased. But they then use that insight into then, okay, we'll change the value proposition. It becomes a lot more affordable, so every part of the office can have it, so almost every desk can have one. So that changes the customer relationships. It's into a rent not buy, which is into a continuing one, which then opens up the number of customer segments that we can have, which means that we need to really expand the factory, because we're going to be making a lot more of these. Boom. Do you see how everything starts coming from that different one decision about, okay, how do we change the epicenter to being a financial one, away from a resource driven one of, we've got a factory, we've got a bunch of skills that makes photocopying super easy. So that's one approach. That's the finance driven. Okay, another approach is the resource driven offer, and this basically says we've got something here that then hits out into the customers, into the finance, into the offer area. And a great example of this is Amazon. Amazon had built this great infrastructure for delivering books. And one of the things about Amazon was that most of the books have to be delivered, or most of what they were selling at back in the late 90s, early 2000s, had to be delivered in the 6 to 8 weeks between before Christmas. So from where we are now at the beginning of November all the way through. So they need to build for that. But for the rest of the year, all that IT, all the server farms, a lot of it was left slack. So they got a key resource that was sitting there doing nothing. And they said, what else could we use it for? And that then sort of said, okay, we've got the computer power. Can we rent it out? Yes, we can. Who would we rent it to? Well, it's not going to be people who buy books. It could be corporates. So it's cheaper and better value than having a server farm on site. And so this is how AWS grew out of an excess capacity, a key resource that Amazon had. The next one is so let's say customer segments. So it's very much customer driven, and so the customers is hitting the value proposition, it's hitting the key resources, it's hitting the revenue stream. And a classic example of a company that's really customer driven is Google, because basically everything that it builds is designed to get data from its free users, and everything it is built is designed to get data to its advertisers so that they can make better advertising decisions. Directly giving them information, indirectly by creating new services for them. Everything else is subsidiary to that. So this design helps them design a lot of the value propositions, Gmail, YouTube, search, etc. This then focuses down on the key resources, the engineers, the IP, the software that they need to develop, and then this, oops, oh, that went a bit wrong. This then drives the revenue that they generate. Then we've got a offer-driven value propositions. So basically, this is where you've got everything is about the offer, and the offer then determines the key resources, the financial model, the customer segments. And a good example here is somebody like Uber, who came up with the idea of the offer, easy taxis for everybody. That is solved a really big problem. Lots of different customer segments over here that they attacked, and if you see what Grab and Didi Chowching are doing, just expanding the business model into more and more customer segments and needing more and more key resources to make it happen. Initially it was cars, it was GPS, it was an app, but over time more and more things have come in as you get Uber Eats, Uber Delivers, Uber Taxi, Uber Premium, each of which need a set of key partners, and each of which has got a slightly different revenue model, a different revenue stream, but that is all driven by the value proposition. And then finally, the final epicenter before we go into starting to look at examples are the multiple innovations, where you do two of these at once. And I think a good example is someone like Hilti, which changed its value proposition. It made much better power tools, and then it rented them out. So you got sort of two epicenters with Hilti sort of playing around, both having an impact. Obviously, if you have lots of epicenters all over the place, the whole thing then becomes a total strangle, and you lose the strategic clarity. So one or two or possibly even three centers can really work, but they've got to come out of what you're doing sort of fairly naturally and not particularly forced. So that's an overview of of the epicenters in the business model canvas. What we're going to do next is we're going to run through a number of business model canvases of rich and famous companies. I think mostly. I've sort of pulled a few of them out at random. So let's see what we can focus on. So, oops, how do I go to next slide? No, I need to turn the color off. So first of all, we have got Airbnb. So I think what Airbnb did is it saw that there was an unused resource, which was it's seeing people renting out their houses on Craigslist, and it saw, okay, there are millions of houses out there in the world with lots of rooms that are unused. There's lots of rental properties that are not always rented out. So I'd say Airbnb is a resource-driven business, and then that then affects that, and then that affects that, and of course it affects the offer. Everything is driven by the amount of property that could potentially be available for rent there. Let's have a look at Amazon now. We're not going to go for a yellow thingy. So we've already spoken about Amazon. I think with Amazon, in many ways, it was a value proposition. It's the everything store, a single place where you can go to buy anything and everything, and that was what was enabled by the internet, what Jeff Bezos saw as the long tail, everything being available. Not so much consumer segments, because literally, as you see there, I put consumers. There's some price innovation, but actually no, not really. It's just was a low cost, because it was a margin save, and the cost driven structure was, it was interesting, but I don't think it drives it. And then all of the rest over on the resource side then came in to help deliver that. Next one, let's having a look at Apple. What color should we use? We'll go back to a blue. So Apple on the business model canvas, I'm not, I think, well, it's not particularly a resource driven, because okay, you've got the design culture, but that is as much marketing and branding. It was putting everything together. I think again an offer driven, because if you look at what Apple was doing in comparison to a lot of other electronic goods manufacturers at the same time, much of what they were doing was of a similar quality, of a similar standard. They weren't ahead of the game, but it was for each particular thing. It was how everything was packaged together. Lots of people had MP3 devices. I think I'd had 2 or 3 different MP3 devices up to that point, and they were all an absolute mess. Apple's genius was putting the value proposition together, and then targeting particular affluent groups of consumers. And then I think really with the outsourced manufacturing, that was just going along a pretty common approach in US manufacturers at the time. So that wasn't an out of the box approach there. Now what have we got? Next? Control Shift D. So playing now, or we don't want to. We'll go back to green. This is Audible. Audible's a audiobooks online. It's also owned by Amazon. Hopefully it's the last Amazon company that we've got in here today. Where did they come from? There's definitely some offer there. It's a super easy place to get your books. It makes it super easy. That fits in with the overall Amazon brand. It's not key resourcing. It's another marketplace. I think it was independent before it was bought by Amazon. It was the aim to get all the audio books inside. There's nothing amazingly interesting there. I think there was definitely the monthly subscription. That was a financial innovation for audiobooks, separating the cost of Audible from the cost of from the purchase of a single book. I think that was quite clever, and so that was a financial innovation. And so you'd also got the value, the offer sort of epicenter happening there. So that's an example of a multiple epicenter business model. Control shift. Oops, no. Trying to remember the key phase, and then okay, so this is in the another one in the knowledge library. This is Blinkist. They do, if you don't want to spend 8 or 10 hours listening to an Audible book, you can listen to one in 5 or 10 minutes for Blinkist. What are they doing here? So they've taken the idea of book summaries, which were existing for quite a while. Are they focused on the segment? I don't really feel it's on that, because actually it's broad. There are lots of different groups of people who want to learn quickly. So I don't think it's particularly the customer epicenter driven. Again, some thoughts on the revenue streams. They want to keep people coming back and turning it into a subscription. Resource driven, possibly, but how are they really different to particular library? So again, I think I'll probably come back to the offer-driven epicenter. It was another of the examples of the relatively early web companies before 2010, seeing how the internet can transform something that had been done traditionally, but not doing it in the same way that it had been done traditionally. So instead of going in and buying a book summary, they turned it into something quite different, with a few other things floating around there. We're going through this quite fast today. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer. So Hilti, which is one of the ones that Alexander Osterwalder talks about in his books, and there's another video for all these. Actually, just pausing for a minute, there are videos discussing most of these business models online, where I go into a lot more depth about how the business model works. Go over, have a look on YouTube. Denis Oakley business model is a good Google search to have a look at if you're not already on YouTube. So where are we on the on here? We're looking at Hilti, and Hilti's the power tools industry was very much focused on selling power tools to individuals, to companies, and there was a huge amount of low cost competition, just really pushing it down. So what Hilti did is they made the decision to increase the price of the tools and switch to a rental model. This meant two things. Firstly, there was this real financial epicenter in Hilti. Secondly, it was really sort of starting to play around with the customers, focusing on construction companies to get them to rent the business model, to rent the power tools rather than buying them. So that then sort of moved it over into breaking the chain of ownership, if you liked, and sort of giving them a lot more flexibility, which meant that they could get better tools for more people out on site, and then restructuring the resources so that the power tools were then so much better than everybody else's. So you were able to hire them for a cheaper on a day rate for the amount of time that they were actually being used, rather than the time that they were being used plus the time that they were sitting in a warehouse not being used. So you've got a number of things all coming together. One day I'm going to get better at drawing these arrows, coming together to make Hilti's new business model work. We've only got, I think, 2 or 3 more now. Control Shift D. Let's go for a yellow one. So this is LinkedIn. I think very much like Google, but not to the same extent. It's based on the, why have I put internet users? That should be business people. Very much focused on the customer segments and getting information about them. So recruiters want to find the best people. How do we find the best people? How do we give recruiters the enough information about the individuals that we're giving them to help understand whether we can make a hiring decision or not? How do we find out whether they've got the right culture or passion? These things are all coming together in the customer segment. So I think this much is very much customer epicenter focused, with a secondary one on the value proposition, because really that was something that was quite new, quite different, that has gone a long way beyond just an online CV, which is what people thought it was when it started out being. Revenue epicenter, not particular. I don't think there's anything amazingly there. And then again on the resource side, for all the paths of the engineers in Silicon Valley, the resource is there to enable the key epicenters, the offer and the customer epicenter here. So then we've got Microsoft. Microsoft's a little bit interesting, if not least because I can't find a colour that isn't going to clash. But we've got a black. This is good. So Microsoft is very much, I think, increasingly now driven by its huge embedded resource base of corporations. That because it's been going, what is it, 40 years, 45 years now. It's got a huge base in corporations, and that is then driving a lot of what it's going out and doing. And yes, there are consumers, and you've got the Xbox, and you've got many other consumer facing things, but to a large extent they are spoiler wars, anti-Google, anti-Apple, to stop them winning in that market, and that's thus encroaching into the core corporate market, which is where Microsoft makes its money. So I think driven by the resources to and they, but not really a customer epicentered focus. Cost structure, no. Revenue, not financial epicenter based, but to a certain extent I think there's an element of offer driven, but really come back, it's a resource driven powerhouse. And then Control Shift D. So this is Mind Valley. Mind Valley does happy clappy, third age, new age videos to help you transform your life and achieve nirvana. So I think we'll go for, no, I'm going to go for red because it complements here. So why does where's Mind Valley come from? I think it's totally on the segments who are going to appreciate people who are unhappy, who are feeling lost, who need something, and then Mind Valley comes up with multiple different offers from different authors, from different coaches, from different lifestyle gurus to transform that. Nothing particularly interesting on the resourcing side, or the model, the finance side, you pay for what you get. Some very well done marketing stuff, but really it is focusing deep dive into the customer segment, understanding what it is that they feel that they are missing in their lives and what they need to transform them. And I think it is worth noticing in this case that Mind Valley aren't really doing anything that hasn't been done for the last 50 years. What they've done again is they've gone and modernized it. They've moved it out of the books, they've moved it out of the self-help DVDs and post by mail courses, and turned it into a very slick multimedia organization. So that works really well. Well, we've got a few more than I thought. Netflix, what colour should we do? Whoa. Didn't mean to do that. Control Shift D, get my pens up. We'll go for a yellow one here. So Netflix, I was talking about this yesterday. It's mass market. There's nothing, the Epicenter is much the same there as Disney, Hulu, NBC, ABC, what is it in the UK? The BBC, ITV. So no, that's important, but not really interesting enough. The revenue, the finance innovation here was stripping the cost down, getting rid of channels, reducing the cost so that you get Netflix at a fraction of what you pay for a lot of channels, making it affordable and enjoyable, and all you can eat whenever you want. So really, I think Netflix comes down to a very cool offer based Epicenter. What do people really want? And they learned this from their experience beating up Blockbuster, focusing on what is the offer that is needed to get this to work, and then figuring out how to make it feasible, and then how to make it financially viable afterwards. So offer for the consumer is where Netflix business model innovation happened. And then the final one, another red one, is YouTube, which is where you're probably watching this. We'll go for blue again. It's Google, and so it's all about finding users, keeping them, engaging them, maximizing the watch time, maximizing their dwell time to get as much information about their viewing habits, and to make them sitting bait for advertisers to come and snap up their attention. And if you notice that we've seen this with Amazon, we've seen it with Google, I think we probably see it in some ways with Microsoft as well, where a company has got multiple brands, that they will often tend to focus on similar epicenters to be driving everything across. So Google search, YouTube, both monetized, both have the epicenters in a similar way. And that's a pattern that you can take advantage of. So that's the focus, running through a bunch of different examples to try and make it pretty real for you. Now, how do you use this? I think you can use this in a couple of ways. So firstly, if you're sitting down and you're coming up with a business model for a new venture or a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, then you've got a much better sense of, okay, how epicenters work, and you can start thinking, okay, how do I build out my business around a particular epicenter? Now, you can either do that, or you can do it as a thought experiment. So if you've got a particular idea or a problem that you're building a solution to solve, much better than having an idea, then you can say, okay, what would it look like if we built this out around a resource epicentered business model? What would it look like if we built it out around a finance driven business model? What would it look like if we built it out around an offer driven business model? And these business models may work, they may not work, but often framing it differently, looking at the business model differently and what you're trying to achieve can give insights. And as I have to say again and again and again, it's not your product, it's not your service that often drives the huge amount of value that can be created by a new venture. It is the business model that is often the driver, the machine that gives you the 50x, the 100x, the 1000x growth that transforms markets, that transforms industries. Yeah, this is really what we're looking at. So that's the first way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is to say, okay, what are other competitors in the market doing? Where are the epicenters in their business model? So, for example, if we've got YouTube had an epicenter in its key resources, yeah? Okay, so this is where it's deriving its strength from. Okay, how can we use a finance-driven epicenter to attack it? How can we use a offer-driven epicenter? How can we use a customer-driven epicenter to attack this part? Because if you don't challenge their resource-driven approach, their source of strength, you're going to be leaving them with a powerhouse that is going to enable them to systematically wipe you out in different areas of the map. So looking at competitors in this way, where do they derive their source of strength? And then starting to think, okay, so if they've got a resource-driven business model, and I want to do a customer focus, how is my customer focused, my customer epicentered business model going to be breaking that apart? What story am I writing? What story am I creating that is going to delight and inspire investors to get them to really see what I'm going to do? And this gets into the really deep strategic layer of trying to understand your competitor and break it apart. There's an amazing book in the written in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, something like that, by a chap called Harry Harrison, and it's called The Stainless Steel Rat. And the stainless steel rat is a thief called Slippery Jim de Grease. I think a Mexican name because of the punability rather than because of anything else. Less enlightened times, I think. And the core part of that is that as the world becomes more electronic, as it becomes more digital, as Harry Harrison put it, it becomes more stainless steel, then flesh and blood rats can't break through the barriers, can't find the gaps in the walls any longer, and you need a stainless steel rat. And so you can't, using the same metaphor, you can't apply the same techniques and same challenges that we did 30, 50, 100 years ago, or even 10 years ago. We need to adapt the way that we're looking at competition, because in many ways competitions are both incredibly more powerful. Looking at the tens of billions of revenues that Apple and Amazon and Google generate each quarter, that's profit that can be, I mean, they can buy 10,000 startups a quarter. Yeah, imagine how many Series A rounds they could fund at $1 million a piece. Yeah, that is the size and scale of them. But at the same time, how increasingly vulnerable large corporations are. Yeah, 20 years ago, GE was the most powerful and admired and successful company on the planet. Now it's not even in the top 100 American companies. Boom. And the lifespan of companies in most business sectors is decreasing rapidly. Whether that is because of the Schumpeterian wave, the wave of disruption that's happening because of digital innovation over the last 10 to 15 years is creating a rapid rate of change, and the rate of change will slow down as we get most of the benefits out of it, as we saw from the electricity age gave us a huge amount of change in the 1950s and 1960s and then slowed down, and the steam age before that, or whether we'll still keep on seeing the same rate of change. But what looking at epicenters does is it helps you to see where they are vulnerable, and it helps you to see how to start hammering them and giving them just real good beating, which gives your startup a much better chance of succeeding, or your new venture going forth. So I hope this has been useful. If you've enjoyed the video, please do subscribe. Yeah, comment on it, do like it. I try and engage with all the comments that everybody gives me, because it's a learning experience for me as much as for you as well. Head over to denis-oakley.com to have a look at all the stuff I put in writing there, and the work that I do for entrepreneurs, for startups, for new ventures, for corporate startups, for corporate ventures, for corporate strategy, helping them come up with new business models. Okay, that's it for today. Speak to you soon.